Hi there, welcome. I'm Jen Hand, and this is Amy Shefflin, and we are here bringing you the top 5 tips to help you beat holiday stress eating. We're super excited to be here. We have lots of fun stuff planned. So a quick overview of the format. We're going to do our 3 tips and then each kind of give you a different perspective on that tip, and end with a Q&A. If you do have questions, pop them in the chat box and we will take them at the end, and we'll get you out of here in about 25-30 minutes. So hopefully we're going to give you some actionable takeaways to help you move through your holidays stress-free and binge-free and not overeat. So a little bit about me. I'm Jen, and many of you know me. And if you are Amy's people and don't know me, I am a nutritionist, a food coach, body image coach, and an author. And I have been doing this work for a few years, and I specialize in women, helping them overcome binge eating, emotional eating, and letting go of dieting.
Hi, and I'm Amy Shefflin, for those of you that don't know me. And thanks for coming. Jen, thanks for the great introduction. I am a CSU researcher in nutrition. I'm also a health coach and nutritionist, and my passion is reading the science and letting people know how to use that to their best advantage in meeting their health goals. So I'm going to give the science background, and Jen's going to give a nice balance of all that experience that she has with the emotional piece. So we hope you enjoy our powerhouse combo tonight. All right, so tip number 1 for this evening is we would like to talk about how restricting or depriving yourself can actually backfire for you. So in particular, what tends to happen when people are depriving themselves or restricting calories, and this can become even more serious in the holidays when we get really busy, is you might forget to eat breakfast and you might skip lunch. And maybe it was on purpose because you're like, man, I'm just gonna superpower this diet, or maybe it was on accident because you got really busy. And then what happens when you get home is all of those hormones in your body are saying, man, not enough sugar. My brain is not working. My cells are tired. And then that's when they're all conspiring against you and giving you those very serious cravings that cause you to eat even more and probably grab those foods that are most convenient. And unfortunately, what happens once you do that is it ends up in this circular hormonal signaling because it reinforces those cravings for junk food. And so actually, the smartest thing that you can do is fuel yourself all day, making healthy choices. Don't let that craving monster out of his cage, and you'll be working actually for yourself to give yourself some food throughout the day.
And I love this from Amy's perspective because I talk about this, but I've never talked about the science and the research and the data behind it. And so Amy's perspective is so fresh and so relatable because it's not just actually someone saying it. There's real evidence to back it up, which is amazing. And the mindset piece plays such a role in the restriction backfiring, because the more you tell yourself over and over, don't eat that, don't eat that, don't eat that, the knee-jerk reaction is that we want to eat that. And so if you can aim for balance, if you can aim for reminding yourself, instead of saying, I am not going to eat that cookie, can you say, how can I fuel my body in a nutritious way? How can I aim to eat balanced? How can I aim to nourish myself in this next meal? And those types of questions really help you go from that don't, willpower, forceful, rigid, very disciplined mindset into something that's softer, that's more gentle. And this gives you freedom. And so you're not using that backfiring knee-jerk reaction, using the willpower, using that restriction to end up overeating and binging, and you use your sense of balance and nourishment and practicality and logic in a way that's really helpful to fuel you consistently and to keep that blood sugar even. So our second tip is taking care of yourself. And again, 2 unique perspectives from under the umbrella of this tip. Taking care of yourself is a preventative tip. So the more you take care of yourself day to day, moment to moment, the less you will end up going to the food to overeat, and have that backfire. So getting curious, having that attitude of curiosity when you're around food, when you want to turn to the food, when you're stressed, where do you get triggered and go to the food? Is it too many family obligations? Is it too many projects at work that you took on? Is it too many things back to back to back where you don't have time to have a steady meal? And seeing where you can link what are my triggers and where do I go into the food to then have a plan. Okay, if my trigger is every Friday I get to the end of the work week and I am going into the food, how can you create a plan that's giving you what you need to take care of yourself Monday through Friday so you're not moving into the food? And so there's this sense of substitution, is that when we eat because we're stressed and we turn to the food, we need to find something else to take care of ourselves so we're not turning to the food. So looking for things like getting fresh air, taking deep breaths, doing some yoga stretches, reading a book, having time for yourself, taking a hot bath, those types of things help you take care of yourself so you don't not take care of yourself Monday through Friday, and then the food is the way you're taking care of yourself on Friday when you get home.
Absolutely. And so not only when you're taking care of yourself are you going to be taking care of that mental portion, but you're also going to be training your body to not be in that fight or flight response. So what happens when you don't take care of yourself and you're feeling that stress is the stress hormone cortisol is going to start rising and rising. And actually, cortisol makes that same hormone that I just talked about, insulin, that's telling your body, oh, I need sugar, I need sugar. So carbs are comfort foods. They actually cause your body to release that feel-good hormone, serotonin. And they can also satisfy that signal from the insulin that your cells need sugar. And so cortisol can reinforce that when you're in stress mode. It also does another thing. So if you're in stress mode, it can actually disrupt all of your tiny microorganisms that live in your gut. Have you guys heard of the microbiome? I've heard a lot of it on the news, so probably most people have. For those of you who haven't, these are the friendly, invisible organisms that help our body reinforce healthy habits or reinforce unhealthy habits. And unfortunately, when your cortisol goes up, it's more likely to reinforce that unhealthy habit. And when you overeat, it's the same thing. So when you feed those little tiny microorganisms, the sugar and the junk food, those are the organisms that are growing and getting more and more. And what we're learning now is they can actually send signals to your brain about what they want you to eat. And you do not want those tiny junk food monsters ruling your brain. You don't. So the important thing to do is give yourself a treat and do it in moderation so that you're not overdoing it, causing them to bloom like a forest of junk food eating monsters, but you're feeding your body the healthy foods that cause those tiny microorganisms that tell you, you know what you want to eat today? You want to eat a carrot. You want to eat some salad. So when you get out of control, it's not just your own mental picture and feeling of stress, but these signals in your body can actually start to reinforce those cravings and that signal to eat junk food. So just know that if you're treating it with balance, that you're going to keep that reinforcing cycle from happening. And if you think about it that way, you'll keep yourself on track. So tip number 3 for tonight is about taking the long view. So with taking the long view perspective, it's remembering that if there's one thing, there's very few things that all nutrition scientists agree on, but one thing almost all nutritional scientists agree on and nutritionists is that the only secure way to keep your healthy weight is to make changes that are lasting. These are lifestyle changes for a lifetime. And so remembering that for your health, the changes you're making are really a marathon and not a sprint. Because what happens when we get in a cycle where we're dieting to lose weight is our bodies are really well-built machines for keeping things the same. If it's working and we're alive and we're thriving, the body's like, let's keep that the same. So when we start losing weight, the body actually works against us initially. It says, wait a minute, are we coming into a famine here? Do I need to save all my resources just in case something nasty happens that I wasn't expecting? And so as we diet and the weight comes down, and then we go back to our old ways, you'll actually find that now your body gains weight more quickly. And it has an internal thermostat of what weight should this body be. And each time that a person diets and loses some weight and gains it back, that thermostat can actually say, oh, I think my weight should actually be this much now. And you can start off with a higher baseline weight than where you started. And so it's almost working against yourself to try a short-term plan that you can't stick to. Not even almost, it is working against yourself to pick a short-term approach to health or to lose weight quickly that you can't sustain, because it can end up backfiring and creating a situation where you're actually having further to get back where you started than before you dieted. So just keep in mind that balance, making choices for the long term, and then remember, if you're treating yourself regularly so you don't feel deprived in your everyday healthy lifestyle, you can do the same during the holidays. The holiday is really just any other day, and if you treat it that way, then you're in it for the long term.
And this one is such a challenging concept because mentally we are instant gratification human beings, and we want, okay, I want to do this for 10 days and then I want to see a result. And so part of this perspective, adopting a long-term view, is retraining your mind to think from that big picture perspective, and not to say, if I've done this, cut out carbs, cut out sugar, whatever, for 3 days, then I expect to get a result. So part of the big picture view is being in that space where you're seeing how your habits change through compassion, through kindness, through curiosity, and not through rigidity and discipline and harsh willpower and making yourself do something. Truly, your habits change when you're gentle and when you're kind to yourself, and not when you're forcing with a heavy hand to make yourself change. And you often see this come January 1st. It's like we, as a culture, we get in this very willpower-based mindset that we are forcing ourselves to change. This is our year. We're going to lose the weight. We're going to eat healthy. We're going to cut out sugar, whatever it is. And that's why all of those things end up failing after a couple weeks, because, like Amy said, it's that long-term view where you're using your body working with you and not working against your body. And taking that big picture view can really help with the food guilt, because if you're thinking about it from the perspective that this is me working towards my health, this is me trying to be a healthy person, and one meal or one cookie or 3 cookies won't make or break your health and wellness, because you have that big picture perspective. And so if you overeat, if you have a bad day when you just end up eating 3 bowls of ice cream, it's okay, because you can learn from it. You can use that as a lesson, and then you can adopt that feedback into the next time that you were in that same situation, but don't turn to the food. So when you're in that big picture, you don't beat yourself up as much, and you don't take the guilt on and have it just eat away at you. So then you feel guilty, and then you want to turn to the food again because you're tired of feeling guilty and you want to make yourself feel better. So it helps you to really understand that you don't make or break your diet with one meal, with even a weekend where you're overeating or overindulging. You're not going to make or break your health and wellness with one thing. And so if you can just feel that sense of relief that you don't have to power through the holidays, you don't have to put yourself on a strict plan to tell yourself you're not going to eat something, you can aim for balance, you can let go of that restrictive mindset, take care of yourself, look at that big picture, and really know, not from an intellectual place, but from a body place where you're saying, oh, okay, the kinder I am to myself, the more gentle I am to myself, is the way that I can make those small, steady changes that really add up to those big results that we want to see for the long haul. So if you do have questions, pop them in the chat box. We did have a couple of questions that were sent in before, and we actually probably have time to go through a couple of them.
Yeah, I think we do.
Yeah, so did you want to add anything else about so we did 3 tips, and so we kind of did 6 really, but we did 3 umbrella tips, and then we each had a perspective. So you're not, it's 5, but it was really 6. So
Bonus tip.
6 didn't sound as good as 5. So
That's really fair. One of us would talk more than the other. So.
That's right. So if you do have questions, just type them in the chat box. And do you want to start with one of the questions that you got?
Sure, yes. So this is a question I get all the time. What happens if you made some bad choices and you overate and it was junk food, and now you're convinced that your body is overrun with those little invisible junk food monsters? Is there any way to get rid of them? Is there any way to reset your gut microbiome so it's telling you to eat healthy foods again? And the research in this area is really new, but there are a few studies that have been done on it. And there are some studies that show actually that intermittent fasting can be one way. So of course, it varies by individual a lot. And so you might have to experiment with the type of intermittent fasting that works for you. But essentially, an alternate day fasting or a 48-hour fast, either water fast or using like 500 to 600 calories of fresh vegetable juices. That encourages the regrowth of those more healthy organisms that are going to be feeding on fiber and vegetables and whole plant foods as opposed to your refined processed foods. And that's been shown to actually reboot your gut microbiome. So you kind of start fresh, and then you can start off after that with eating some, healthier foods that are building that community that you want, that are going to give you cravings to eat the foods that are going to help your body be healthy. Now, one thing to mention if you're thinking about intermittent fasting is, of course, not eating for an entire day can also, make sure that you have support, that you're working either in a group or with a professional, so that you don't end up in a situation where you intended to intermittent fast and now, darn it, you're eating unhealthy foods at the end of the day. So just make sure you go in with a plan of attack that's going to work with you so that it's successful.
And I'd like to add in here so what I usually tell women who struggle with binging and overeating is having a healthy relationship with food comes first. The relationship piece comes first, and then the health piece comes second. So intermittent fasting for those of us who have been in that diet and binge cycle may be that too restrictive piece. That restriction ends up backfiring. So again, like Amy said, really with a professional, with that support, and typically what can happen if you're in that diet and binge cycle, using that as a secret way to restrict, I'm an intermittent fast, so I lose the weight, so I want that result, can typically end up backfiring.
And so then you would want to be very strategic about the type of fasting you're choosing, because it doesn't have to be something where you don't have any food and you're only having water for 2 days. You can just take an approach where maybe you're, approaching it so that you eat the same amount of calories in a shorter period of time in the day to try to give your digestive system more of a rest.
Yeah.
And using vegetable juices so that you're not having low blood sugar and then getting those cravings. So,
definitely.
That's why it's so individual, isn't it?
It is. Amy and I were talking about when we were meeting to go over our notes for this, that Amy eats in a vegetarian lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Is that what you call it?
Sure, that works.
Amy is a vegetarian. I don't want to label her. Amy eats in a vegetarian lifestyle, and I don't. And we were talking about how it's so interesting because that really works for her. And what really works for me is having animal protein. And we just sparked this great discussion about how it's so individual and how each of us is so different. And that's why figuring out what works for you and your lifestyle and your health and your preferences and what foods you like and all of that stuff is so important, because there's no one way. I mean, eating vegetarian works wonderful for Amy, and it just doesn't work for me. So it's just I feel like it's such a good example, because we both are very successful in the ways that we eat individually, and that's what we've figured out works for each of us.
And that can actually be an alternative to fasting too, for people that fasting just isn't going to work for. And that includes people that have had a relationship with food that they have to be very conscientious of. And it's also true for other people that have health conditions, or maybe it just doesn't work for you because it ends up creating an obsession with certain foods for you. So in those cases, you can actually just make a plan where you're eating a very specific set of foods that encourages healthy organisms to regrow in the gut. So it doesn't have to be fasting. There are other options.
Lots of options. So another question that we had was, is this such a common question? What happens when you know all of these concepts intellectually, but still overeat because of the holidays, because of stress, because of overwhelm? And this is a hard one because so many of these health and wellness concepts at first are intellectual. So vegetables are good for us. We should eat a lot of fiber, drink lots of water. The basic common knowledge that we have starts as an intellectual concept. And in order to take these from just a thing you have in your head to anchor it into your body, a great way to do that is get really in tune with how it makes you feel. So, for example, drink lots of water. Yeah, we know that. Okay, but how do you feel when you're drinking lots of water? Does your energy increase? Do you sleep better? Are you more even-keeled throughout the day? When you're adding vegetables into more vegetables, do you feel differently? Is your digestion different? Do you have fewer cravings? Are you more or less satisfied? So using your body as the feedback, as the mechanism to experiment on. So it's really just a big experiment, and you're looking to find the clues as to what intellectually works for my body. And that's really where it clicks. You take it from the mind and then you integrate it with the body. And so it's not just us telling you, hey, restriction can backfire. It's you really knowing that because you've experienced, okay, when I cut out carbs, when I tell myself I'm going to have a cheat day, it always ends up backfiring. So that can be one way to really anchor it into your body, is to get curious about how it's making you feel. And then it no longer becomes just something you're thinking. It becomes something you experience within yourself.
And that's part of why I'm so passionate about helping people understand these unseen signals, right? Because if you're getting signals because your hormones aren't really balanced properly that are telling you, oh, that you think you actually want to eat a whole ton of junk food, or maybe you have an imbalanced gut community, and so that's telling you that you want to eat a lot of junk food. It can cause this distrust with our own bodies when it's sending us signals that are not reinforcing health. But if you know mentally what's going on, then you can take steps so that you can reach this point where you have this relationship with your body, where you're listening to it, and where you know that you can trust that what it's telling you is reinforcing your health. So that's really the ultimate goal, is having that biology on your side, having that mental health piece in place so that you have everything moving you forward to that place of your best health.
And what's interesting, we also had a discussion about this book. Is it Michael Greger? No,
yes.
Is that his name? How Not to Die. He's a big advocate of a plant-based way of eating. And we were talking about how there's all the research is there, all the studies are there, all the intellectual knowledge is there in that book to prove that plant-based eating is where it's at, preventing diseases, et cetera, et cetera. And I was telling her that of my own struggle of like, yeah, okay, but intellectually I know it's supposed to be good for me, but physically I need animal protein or I don't feel satisfied. And so we had this great discussion because it's just another example of you can know something intellectually, but maybe where you are right now in your journey to health and wellness just isn't at a place where you can know that intellectual concept. It's just not where you are. It's not working for your body right now. It's okay. You can revisit it. You can throw it out and come back to it later, or maybe it just doesn't resonate with you. So I think it's another great reminder that it's take what you resonate with, experiment with your body and your preferences, and then leave the rest, because we're all so individual.
Yeah, you really have to live it to know it. And so you got to try it out, see what works for you, and then you just tweak and adjust until you find that best way that is the perfect fit for you.
Do you want to do, we're at 24 minutes. Do you want to wrap up, or do you want to do one more question?
I don't know. Do you have another one from your email list?
I didn't.
Okay, great. Yes, so this is a good one too. Let's say that you didn't know that doing a short-term approach to dieting was going to reset your baseline weight, and now it's been creeping up and you want to get it back to that starting point. Is there a way? Is there a way to go back in time and reset that point back where you started? And the answer is yes, it's definitely possible. It requires this, again, marathon attitude that you're going to be making changes that you're going to be willing to take on for your whole healthy lifestyle. There are a couple of tips for sure that are important to incorporate if you want to go down that path. So far, the research is showing that a higher protein, lower carbohydrate approach to eating is more effective for lowering back to the, lowering that base weight set point. And the second one is it's really important to incorporate exercise in combination with that. So that's another thing that Jen and I have talked a lot about, is just how sometimes stacking these habits is greater than the sum of its parts for reinforcing your health and your progress. And that's especially important if you're wanting to go ahead and reset back where you started and make progress in the right direction.
And that really ties into our point about adopting that big picture view, because if you're constantly checking after like 2 days, how do I look? Did I lose weight? Get on the scale. Am I smaller? Do I fit into my smaller jeans? And you're constantly doing that, it can mentally make you fail, because then you're like, screw it, I haven't lost the weight yet, I'm not down a size, and then you let go of all of that progress, all of those healthy habits that you've been cultivating in exchange for not getting the result that you see. And so it's kind of that great last point of that big picture is where we need to focus. And it really is retraining your mindset. How are you feeling day to day? Do you have more energy? Are you having less cravings? Do you feel more satisfied? Do you feel better because you're exercising more, because you're moving your body? That's really where our results are. And that is what creates those long-term changes of resetting our body and having that health that we're aiming for.
Exactly. You can actually stress yourself out just by trying to make these changes, which is like cortisol spike, and now you're already working against yourself. So
take one of these things into the holidays.
That's right.
If you are watching the replay, you are welcome to pop in a question and we can kind of come back and type out a response if you are watching this later. But we did want to give you a quick announcement for local Fort Collins or Northern Colorado people that we are hosting our first live event. Yay. Which is so exciting. Yes. So it's called A Crash Course in Intuitive Eating, and it's Lose the Diet, Trust Your Gut, and it's at the end of January, and we'll post all of the information in the link when this video is posted. And if you are local, it's free. You're welcome to sign up. And if you're virtual, there's tons of content on Amy's website, foodphd.com.
Foodphd.com.
And obviously all my stuff as well. But thank you so much for coming. And we hope you have a wonderful holiday and get a lot out of this. And remember, take 1 to 2 things that we said and use them as a focus.
That's right. Be gentle with yourself. Take care of yourself. Be balanced. Have joy in the season. We hope to see you in the new year.